Daily trading recap. Let's get after it today on Tuesday, the 5th of April, 2022. To Christ be the glory, as always. Let's get over some dollar volume, market internals on the day. Quick, before we get going over anything else, we are 1 hour and 1 minute after the close down. NASDAQ, $253 billion volume on the day. NYSE, $349 billion volume. OTC's $1.8 billion volume today in their market. Again, strategies of the futures working out pretty nicely. Only taking one real trade on CLVS. I'm excited to get after and go in depth on that one today, but definitely thinking that I'm going to have to be making that step of using that cash that I've got in other accessible places that I've kind of just been using as a safe harbor or storage mechanism that's, it's earning interest and it's giving me money, but I think I'm definitely going to have to make that step and put that in my futures account specifically for this daily strategy, the session strategy for the futures that I've been tackling based on the backtested data. Totally automated strategy of getting long immediately at the open and then playing in for how many ever points specifically that I've dialed in that has seemed to have worked the best to protect for the downside on the losing days, but still also maintain enough and get enough of a good hit rate to happen consistently a good number of days consistently in a row to still produce a viable strategy. So that's looking like over the course of the entire history of the data that I have of like back to 2012 type of data, that it's still produce over a point a day consistently over the long run, over even those terms of like the slower, not even compared to how much more volatile and voluminous we are now in this type of market, but of even backtesting over there. So that's exciting to see. Specifically for that one, the 930 strategy that I'm still going after that worked beautifully today, again, to look for 2 points just above the open, immediately getting filled there, is more of a more recent type of strategy. So that one, not so crazy interested in sizing up larger, as I've had to take some few knocks on that one. Unfortunately, I think past week that was the 1.6K loss day. That would have been a winner day, but it just didn't have enough margin in the count to be able to sustain that unrealized P&L to be able to make that one to be a winner in the time frame that I allotted it to. But that's neither here or there. That's besides the point. So just journaling and kind of talking to myself that I'm going to be looking to take that step in the near-term future here. Also wrote in my journal thoughts I was having, I feel like I'm spending more time when I'm in front of the screen or when I'm outside of market hours doing my kind of study time or prep time, that I spend a lot more time looking at current scans or just trying to scan the current market or essentially do more predicting than I do really studying charts. And I don't really want to do that. I don't think I'm getting a full benefit of what's actually happening or going on when I'm doing that. I obviously want to keep doing that. I can't just completely stop doing that, of just doing current scans. That's the entire point of what trading is, of finding the next ticker to trade. But I think I need to dial that back a little bit and invest more time into evaluating the charts that happen on that day and just going over them completely again and just absolutely beating my eyes to death on those, specifically on what actually happened, and not so much of, because I spend a lot of time of just where has it been on scanners and just looking at current past scans and then just very breezily clicking through a lot of tickers that pop up on the screen, just thinking, okay, there's nothing I really see there, nothing I really see there. I mean, it's just a lot of that it's not so much a hard development type of study or preparation time that I do, but it's just it really isn't maximizing my efficiency or learning experience when I do that. So I think I'm going to be able to twist that and try to make a little self-awareness on my aspect there to say that there is more room in the tank for learning and growth from each individual day in that study prep time there. That just wrote in my journal. And yeah, on the CLVS kind of cut, as I'll allude to or get into with the specific ticker, but cut it short for what was a beautiful and still could be in the next few days a nice opportunity for what I was trading for, and cut it short, similar to what I did yesterday on the future side, but now I'm actually doing it with real trades on the equity side here today. And I think it's just a difference of, this is something new that I'm doing, of being in an actual trade, now having to put my big boy pants on and understand, okay, this is actually what a loser looks like when it's losing, or this is what, even though I think I'm seeing the signs, it's not actually signs. So it's a good problem to have, that, hey, I'm seeing winners, I'm in these winning trades, but I've just cut myself short. Okay, great. Well, now we can adjust that. That is self-induced. That's not the actual chart. That's the problem. I'm in the correct tickers and I'm identifying the correct spots to be at, but it's okay. Now it's an adjustment, again, still on my part, just as is everything with trading, but just good affirmation there on the aspect, and just funny little coincidence, not a coincidence, nothing is a coincidence in my opinion, but just funny note there that I saw today comparing it to that recent memory of yesterday. So I think that's all I had for the introduction. I'll get into CLVS now, talking about the main player that I was going after today, and I want to pull up the volume profile chart, which was really the main reason for this specific trade. So, all right, so here we are. This is just on scans that I got the volume profile set up for how I was seeing it during the scans. Getting beside myself, but this was essentially the main indicator for this trade on my book. A bit of a higher float again on CLVS here. It actually shows 140 million float on this Americano biotech, but still shows the potential for great moves on this, even though it is a large company, and even Dilution Tracker doesn't show anything crazy for it because of how big of a company it is. The opportunity for price action and movement is still there. So coming into today, kind of closing off the perspective, we see a huge, nice, biggest bar around this 255, 260 area. So saying, okay, now price is bleeding off of this breakout attempt that it had on that third day yesterday, the previous trading day. Now we're pulling back there a little bit. Could we find any amount of support? Obviously, it's found some key metrics there. And of course, we have that $2.50 of more of a psychological key level right underneath that as well to also act as a potential barrier. So it's shown a little bit that it can have some influence on the way it trades on that first day. You can see a little bit of bounce here, a little bit of lows, holding that in the afternoon session a little bit. Saw a little bit of a perk too around that area, spiking through and around. It's not so hard technically, but in that range. Same thing coming in on that pre-market yesterday, finding a bounce off that 2.5 level. And I mean, the volume profile is speaking for itself of using that as a metric to say, hey, if we trend closer to that area in pre-market tomorrow, or maybe even market hours, and start to form a base, I could see myself getting a trade to have a very nice risk reward that if it breaks through there, then okay, wow, it's proven to itself that that's not even just like a VWAP indicator. That is just the total volume profile saying that, okay, sellers are in control. It is under the max location of where all volume interest is currently on this ticker. So that would be a good indicator that the trade is over that I would be looking for. But coming into, I'll go ahead and get rid of this now. Back to the business of where we were trending today, still above that 2.5. It did have a hard little pull off, but bounced off of there. And as we're holding in pre, getting closer to, this is starting in 8:30, so an hour before market opens, kind of holding these levels of 257, 258-ish. So slowly and ever so slowly, I just start defining a little position of myself. 10 shares, 20 shares. I think I had 50 shares in total after these three first little entries of saying, hey, I think there is potential. I don't think this trade is happening now, but I think it is finding a little bit of a base, and maybe that's a little bit premature to be saying, okay, well, I want to be closer to this 2.5 mark, but that's not to say that it has to go perfectly to there for me to get long, to play off of there. It's still 7 cents of risk for, looking for a minimum of 20 cents plus risk to the upside. Looking to be selling into $3 minimum for that type of trade and catalyst that it could have potentially today or even over the next few days. That's what the thought process was coming into today. And on that thought process for thinking it out and having a nice and defined risk reward for this trade, I was willing to step up my position size. So in total, with this first little get in and go out, took up to 700 shares, all round tripping here, getting myself up to 600, maybe even 500 before market hours. So we had some nice volume coming in and thought I was buying alongside a wave that was just going to, that first minute candle was going to be the low of the day, and this thing was just going to start immediately ramping off of that little base it had during pre-market of 257-ish. So we threw in another 100 shares off of that, but that was just a little bit ignorant and a little bit ill-willed of me to say, okay, it's the first minute of market open. A lot of things, crazy things can happen, and a lot of crazier things have happened, and I was already in the trade at that point. I can't try to force more of that just in that 1 minute candle. I should have let it do what it wants to do, but sure enough, it has called a little bit of a wedge, but 3 minutes defines itself a little bit closer to VWAP. Everybody settles down quickly, and then ultimately the definition of what the trade would be came out, and buying alongside that strength, not the most voluminous amount of green candles in these two green candles to push it to a new high of day during market hours here, but buying into some of that strength again to get me to a full 600 shares position size, finding it to a new high. It's getting a 267, I believe, for some reason was some amount of key level, and even looking back, if I find 267 here, that I believe that was actually the high of this day. Yeah, so for whatever reason that acted up again. as a barrier for entry of, okay, gosh, that bid just needs to step up there. We just need to take that one little extra step to get to the top here to ride that little mountain. But it just was not going to happen. So try to also view this in the light of, I want to be taking a bigger size position on this trade, but it doesn't have to necessarily be a one size fits all, immediately one entry is my entire objective. I kind of did from when I've done that in the past, a few little times of testing that, but of almost trading different trades on the same chart, of identifying, okay, I've got a little position here already set up, and I still think there's plenty more room left, but I don't want to be fully chasing with a full position size. But I could feel myself taking 100 shares here from this point to say that could be a totally different trading mindset versus what I'm establishing these trades and entries for the potential move to be trading later intraday or even the next few days, right? So that's the kind of perspective I tried to keep a little bit with these market hours entries, and even this one as well, this entry here of another 100 shares of sizing in that say that I still think there's more upside in this trade, but I don't want to be using my full entry size, and I don't really want to be using the same stop either with all of those entries. So just kind of, that is when it starts to become more and more, and even more than 2 or 3 of those, then it's obviously just becomes way too haywire to try and manage all of that or think that I'm serving the trades well in that. But maybe just a little bit of that to kind of can appease myself and offer a better risk reward than me just trying to say, gosh, well, I don't have the fullest position size that I initially wanted coming into this. Can I size up just like a little bit more at these random key levels just to say that I have this position size, but it's not really at the most optimal risk reward level. I can adjust the individual trades for those specific position sizes on those trades that way. So maybe factoring that into more trades, but I'll continue to play around with it and see if it works for me and my personality as a trader. I think that's the biggest part of it all is, it doesn't matter how good the strategy is. If it doesn't mesh with me well, then it's not going to be able to use repeatably and consistently in the future. So anyway, came into market hours with the thesis of, still risking that. I want to say that this low here was the defined risk, but still that 2.5 as a more psychological level was going to be that key risk area. Obviously not holding myself to the hard technical level aspect of that, as was shown in this huge, was it the biggest volume candle of the day? No. I had some more volume in the afternoon, but one of the biggest volume candles in the morning session that it just barely wicked below there and immediately recovered after that and continued to hold a few minutes later off of there in these next 2 minute candles, 10.16 and 10.17 there, that it held perfectly off of that 2.5. But obviously see a lot of stops were just barely collected in that little flush there. And sure enough, then perfectly held, reclaimed a VWAP, started to test to that original high of day during market hours, and then sure enough, we get the actual push above 2.7. This was a little late entry for me on 10 shares because I want to say it was frustration, but it was, I knew as soon as I exited here and then it started to hold in VWAP again of like, this is going to come back. I didn't really have the cash to be able to trade, to take a full size again, and didn't want to take another stab at it, knowing that I could bias myself or just try to revenge trade. I don't think I ever revenge trade, but I do so much mental armada against revenge trading that I really doubt it could ever happen. Like, how am I going to put that? I'm going to go on to the next thing of, I was so late with this entry here that it was 10 shares anyway. It was just really about, okay, well, we've actually broken to a new high of day. I think this thing still has the opportunity to ramp. I'm just buying the breakout now just to be a part of it, not to make any actual money, but to say that, gosh, I was in this. I still want to be a part of it and have some amount of educational experience from it. Let's get these 10 shares sliced on at whatever stupid fill I got there. But then sure enough, it stops me out as it breaks that 2.7 level again. And then sure enough, rebounds perfectly off of there. So this was just that little teaser that it's not, this is a great example again of it's not so much about a hard technical level, is just that area. And it's how many times over and over again, and I know Mike Bellafiore talks about it often, of these little fake out breakout trades of just keeping an eye on that. Just because a technical level is broken doesn't mean that the trade is over. It's all about supply and demand. Where are the buyers and sellers? And is this actual sentiment for the chart true? So even getting stopped out on that little tiny 10 share trade before it would end up ripping to that $3 mark that I eventually was looking for, and perfectly that I had it at, I don't know if these actually reached, these ones did reach 3, but I had it sell orders for this little 10 share trade at $2.99. And I know I would have placed the same thing for this whole big share position initially from that morning session as well. that factoring in that perfectly too, being able to get hit there into that breakout point if it did have more room beyond that $3 level mark. But pricing myself in at that 299, gosh, I was there. I was a part of it, had the plan and the preparation, had the perfect risk level, and then, factoring in, I want to say that, oh yeah, I would have totally been able to hold through and not set a stop just at that 2.5 level and been able to hold through that little wick out. But yeah, who would have known? Who knows what would have happened? Or even with this little one, even just looking at this again of how it stopped out below that 2.7 mark, the breakout level, held that level, and then broke through the bottom of that again, and then eventually recovered to the upside of that little level, 269 and 27, to then start the final move to $3 there for the whole day. And even looking at this from a more outward perspective of if I was still holding this position, I know I would have been selling. Probably it would have been out, holding pretty much everything into that $3 push and selling there. Maybe I would have been scaling out some along the way, but definitely would have been out into that $3 push. But even if I had held some on, still looking decent for the recovery it had after it pulled all the way back to VWAP and how it's sailed into the close there. Man, I could still see this thing having a nice little rippy opportunity back above $3 again going into tomorrow if it did so allow. I could see it happening. I don't have a position on now. That's obviously my conviction in it for that case. But yeah, we were in it. We were prepared. The preparation aspect was there, but it was just about having that more refined and tolerance. And of course, this is an example again of, okay, well then why did you change your risk level intra-trade? If you were risking that 2.5 level originally, why did you change it to, with this specific trade, as soon as it was falling off into weakness, why did you sell there? And then even into more weakness as it was just breaking VWAP, and eventually it did break low a day, but was still kind of holding your risk. Why define your risk level again, especially while you're in the trade? And man, these are the ones that absolutely make you slap yourself in the face going, I should have stuck to my original game plan. But man, there's also the ones too that's saying, I'm so glad that I adjusted to what I felt the chart was showing and moved my risk level up or moved my risk level down. I saved myself so much profit, or I avoided so many losses by doing that. I think there's going to be so many of those in the future of my trading career that I can't knock myself so hard to say, gosh, why did you change your original game plan? You were right. It isn't about being right ever. It's just about trading the price action and trading what's there. And that's going to be king always, is adjusting to that and being able to understand how she feels and how she wants to act on the day. So I can knock myself for cutting out a potential nice profit on the day in this trade, but I can also give myself a lot of praise to say, man, hey, we were prepared. We were in this one and identified this one without any other Twitter help, without any other millionaire chat, or someone putting in the chat to say, hey, watch this trade or look for those things. But it was just totally identified, and yeah, proud of it. Going to learn from it and continue to apply it to the rest of my trading career, the days ahead. Just quickly wanted to go over SBFM, big crazy mover on the day. Total in market hours was 148%, $675 million volume traded on the day, 444,000 trades. Pretty insane. I can go over the references quickly. Canadian pharmaceutical company, pretty low flow. Newscast today was their mRNA molecules prove effective against multi-drug resistant cancer cells. Whoopee. I thought I saw on Dilution Tracker that they had warrants exercisable at 425, which I just wanted to mention quickly for how perfect, and maybe the overall reason for this run-up was for how perfectly it topped there, that shorts would just start piling in based off of how perfectly it held that level. But as it just started to consolidate and it was still above VWAP, and you eventually got the push above, and just people unwilling to exit their position or cut losses quickly, how it could just very easily ramp off of there. For that pristine of an indicator of warrants exercisable at 425, there's overhead at this specific level. It held perfectly underneath that level. Let's bag all in short. And sure enough, we're already bagged to the upside even before market open. So maybe that was a reason for the huge move, for the huge dollar volume coming in, but it's trying to look at Dilution Tracker again. It doesn't show that. So I may have just been completely spaced out when I was trying to do scans in the morning there, looking at Dilution Tracker that way. It also had a recent run on March 9th. I think that was most recent, just as a quick mention of very early in pre-market move and then just kind of dying down, not really having any strength over VWAP and just kind of lackluster market session again. but plenty of downside move on this one. And this was another conversation that was in the chat with Jack number 2, Jack Schwartz, and somebody else in the chat asking that question of like, why do some of these big volume, big percent movers become this, or why do some of them become just so over diluted with players that it just becomes untradeable, and why do some of them become the rocket ships that just go off into space? And, it's the curse of so many eyeballs on the screens on the same ticker that, gosh, yeah, it's just no fun to be a part of within the first few minutes, especially trying to trade it as a dip and rip. Okay, you're just getting, we have a nice little opportunity here. It's holding a little higher low, maybe scaling in here around 6.2-ish. Selling, if you've got limit orders into that point to a new high of day or just below, okay, maybe you're getting a little scalp off of that, but just of how mind-numbing it can become within that first hour and a half even of market open, it's just sometimes becomes more unfortunate and a waste of mental energy for the rest of the day even than to be trying to trade it for any amount of scalping opportunities there, just because it's the prettiest pearl that we've seen in a long time of very great dollar volume and very great percentage moves that it becomes so alluring, like the Mermaid Siren. I think that's right, the Mermaid Siren. That's from the Odyssey. That just becomes so attracting, but there's plenty of other opportunities to go around. It just doesn't have to be. I think I talked about that yesterday as well too, of not just being so succumbed to, I have to trade this today because it has the most dollar volume. That doesn't. If it's untradeable, it's untradeable. So looking at that conversation more and trying to match that to my own reflection of charts of when is that line or what is the indicator that some of these become just, gosh, I just don't even want to touch it because there's just so many people involved. And that's how I live a lot of my trading career too, is I think a lot of charts too are just so jam-packed with a lot of eyeballs and a lot of perspectives that I just don't want to mess with. I'm over there trying to find the little corner deal, just the nickels and the scraps that nobody really else is paying attention to. And that's not the best of ideals at times, because if nobody's paying attention to them, then there's nothing to actually move the stock. But sometimes those can be some of the best deals that just flies absolutely under the radar. And there's not so many incredible different perspectives on the chart that you have to try to account for in order to see the full beauty and breadth of what the chart wants to say, in a sense. So I think that may be one of the barometers for judging when and where and why some of these tickers with the big volume, with the big percentage move, act the way they act, or just do what they do. I think that's all I got to say for it. So, that's really all I had on the trading day today. More learning lessons, more back testing to do, more getting after it to be gotten after. So I sincerely thank you guys for watching. We will catch you guys on the next one.